She's possessive of dry old podcasts on account of being one. Welcome into Additional Crew. This week we bring you Tim and Millie. Years into their relationship, they find themselves at a crossroads as they move to the country for Millie's new job. With tensions already flaring, an encounter with an unnatural force threatens to corrupt their lives, their love, and their flesh, leading to extreme codependency. That is, of course, Michael Shanks' foray into body horror together, 2025, in theaters at the time this podcast will be released. So brand spanking new. Um, yeah, before we jump into the movie and everything like that, let's momentarily introduce our host here. So of course, I am Nick, hanging out with you, and with me today is Janice, my lovely partner. How you doing, Janice?
Yeehaw! I'm sorry, I don't know what else to say.
Heck yeah. That's fair. That means we're getting started. That's what yeehaw means. So, this podcast is going to follow pretty much the same format as a Dirty Rotten Scoundrels release. So, if you're confused, just listen. You'll figure it out. It's not that confusing. We'll jump in the movie shortly. I do just want to do a quick shout out because even though I'm not talking about album releases, I do want to bring up one album that I've listened to 3 times and it's exceptional. That is Greet Death's new album, Die in Love. It's got this like shoegaze, darkly emotional, mostly stripped back feel to it. It's actually got one song that's pretty heavy, and I will tell you the name of that song momentarily. But the harmonies are fantastic. The lyrics are dark but intriguing. It's just an excellent album. It's one of those albums that clicks the whole way through. And I don't know that I find albums like that terribly often anymore. So I just want to bring it up and say, hey, if you want something new and fresh that feels like it's always been there, but it's something new. Check out Greet Death's "Die in Love" album. Um, I'm not going to pull the
Three
names of the tracks,
deaths
so just
dying
just listen
love.
to the whole album as a whole. Trust me on this one. I give it a 9 out of 10. Greet Death. Like, hello, Death. Um, okay, so let's jump into it. So we're gonna start with their very best. Okay, so this is where we each explain what our favorite roles these actors are in previously. In this film, you do have 2 particularly famous actors. So we've got Dave Franco and Alison Brie. Janice, why don't you kick us off with Dave Franco's favorite roles? Or your favorite roles of Dave Franco's.
Okay. I had to do a little bit of digging, but because I know he had like I know his face from so many things, and of course he's James Franco's brother. But after doing some digging, I found that he was in 21 Jump Street, which I guess was one of his breakthrough roles. And I remember that movie, and I saw it in theaters. That was the first movie I ever saw Dave Franco in, and I just remember automatically thinking that guy is related to James Franco because they look alike so much. So I was looking back at some clips from the movie and kind of just remembering it because I know that when I first saw it, I really liked it and thought it was super funny. And his character, I remember disliking his character a lot. And so that was kind of my first impression of Dave Franco was just this kind of jerk jock drug dealer character in the 21 Jump Street remake. And I just gotta say, like, I mean, he was a really good actor in that movie, and he played a really good jerk. And I do remember not liking him, but it's cool to see how far he's come. The next movie that I remember him in was The Disaster Artist, and I think he played. Didn't he play like one of the film producers or something in that movie?
Was he the main actor of the film? I don't
Well,
remember.
his
I think
um,
he was
that was
Greg
the Tommy
Sestero,
Wiseau.
so yeah, one of the main actors.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
James Franco played Tommy Wiseau.
And
Is that how
James
you say
Franco
it?
played Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
I really liked that movie. I thought it was really
yeah, I
good,
do. Hmm.
and I just remember, yeah, seeing Dave Franco in that as well. So those are my main uh, things I remember him being in. What about you?
Yeah, Disaster Artist was up there for me too. I think we actually saw. Yeah, Disaster Artist was up there for me too. I think we actually saw that one in theaters together. Um, but that one was up there for me. The two I remembered him from the most were Now You See Me from 2013. It was like some con man magic movie that had Woody Harrelson, Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Mark Ruffalo, Jamie Eisenberg, and of course Dave Franco. And Dave Franco at the time was the least relevant of those stars, but he held his own. He actually did a pretty good job in the movie. While not like a masterpiece, it's a pretty good movie, entertaining at the very least. Um, and then I also remembered him from this like really awful remake of Fright Night from 2011 starring Colin Farrell. He wasn't, and it was Anton Yelchin, I believe. He wasn't the main actor. He was like a really small bit role, but he was such a jerk in that bit role, and he bullied McLovin. Um, it was a terrible movie, but I do remember him from that. But yeah, so those are my favorite movies. How about for Alison Brie? Do you have a favorite uh, foray for Alison Brie?
Well, of course, Alison Brie. The first thing I ever saw her in was the show Glow, which I really liked, and I watched I think all of the seasons of that. And then I think I saw her in a few smaller movies on Netflix. Maybe one was a thriller. But yeah, that's the main thing that I remember her from because she was the main character. And it was about these women wrestlers from the 80s, which is based on a true story. And it's super awesome. And the outfits are really cool. And that's basically what I remember her from. And I know I've seen her in other things, but I just can't recall what those exact things are.
It was a great show too. It really was. Um,
And
I for Alison Brie, she's been in a ton of things. Oh, go on.
I was going to say Mark Maron was in that too, and I really liked his character with her in that. They had good
Mhm.
chemistry.
They did. I also the movie role I remember her from is another horror movie from the 2010 2011. It's Scream 4. She was the advertiser agent publicist for Sydney in that movie. And like she was one of those early characters that was like, oh, maybe she's Ghostface. She keeps saying slightly evil things, and she's kind of a jerk. And it's all the evidence is planted in the back of her car. And then it has that like halfway through the movie, she ends up getting killed in a parking garage. And then you're like, oh no, it wasn't her. So who was it? You know, she played kind of that pivotal role that all these whodunit slasher movies has, where it's like she's the early target, but she's not the right one.
I don't remember that.
And she was a jerk in that movie, which is yeah, she was a total jerk in that film, and which is weird because she's not usually a jerk. Um, at least as far as I know, she doesn't seem to be much of a jerk in a lot of them films. Yeah. Um, what do you say we jump into the film?
Sounds good.
All right, let's do this thing. All right, so again, this movie is together from 2025, directed by Michael Shank. This is his first like major motion picture, so there's not a lot to talk about his history. Um, It's starring Alison Brie, starring Dave Franco, and it's just this movie that kind of is this weird metaphor for codependency. You have this new couple, or no, not this new couple, this really old established couple, move from a house in the city or apartment, whatever, into a house in the country. That house in the country is Dave Franco's parents, I think, and it brings back all sorts of weird memories. Um, yeah, and then you kind of just have this like mixture of relationship issues followed by a supernatural slash cult feeling because they take a hike into the woods and they fall into an old church. James Franco drinks some nasty water. The nasty water does things to his body where he is, I don't want to say physically attracted because that's not exactly the right word. He's physically unable to stop his body from attempting to merge with Alison Breeze. And we don't know that at the beginning of the movie, but it becomes pretty clear throughout the film that that's what's going to happen. And then most of the film focuses on their attempts to stop that from going on. Um, and I guess I should have given you guys a warning. This is pretty spoiler heavy. uh, I'll edit that in later. Um, but yeah, so the story is fairly unique. Follows a few different plot points. I would say it's just off the bat, it's a pretty effective way to deal with codependency is to make it like a physical ability to show the merging of two characters. And I know we had a lot of talks about this immediately after the movie ended, but it's kind of got a lot of different messages going on in my opinion, and it's kind of confusing. I could see how you could take this a lot of different ways, especially with the way the ending goes where so and again, spoiler alert, if you're listening, you haven't watched this movie, just turn this pod off, go watch the film, come back to it. But they do end up physically merging together and becoming one person that looks like a mixture between the two of them.
which was the weirdest,
And for me, it brings up a lot of
which was the weirdest looking person. I was just gonna say,
yeah, it was yeah, and that's fair. It, so like for me, like the first half of the movie feels like a clear warning against codependent relationships, and the second half of this movie, the message, and you can give me your idea of this, Janice, if you have a different one, because I think you probably do. But the second half of this movie almost presents a contradictory message to me, where it's like, okay, so what actually happened is that they weren't fully committed to the relationship, even in their minds. So when he finally fully committed to the relationship in his mind, he was able to let go, and they were able to find happiness in being together, even if that was being merged as one.
yeah,
Which is kind of it felt like a little bit of a contradictory message in my opinion. But what are your feelings on that?
yeah, it was pretty interesting. From the very beginning, I kind of, I mean, I definitely sensed that James, or not James, sorry, Dave Franco's character Tim was feeling trapped. He, especially at the going away party that they were having at the beginning of the movie, which was a going away party for Millie and him, but Millie had gotten a job in a town right outside of the city that they lived, and they were basically just moving away from all their friends. And you could kind of sense in this scene that he was not exactly wanting this, but he had kind of ended up in this position as a result of this relationship that he was in. And so I think throughout the film, or at that beginning of the film, you kind of feel him as like a more distant partner in the relationship, maybe one who's trying to, who would hope to disconnect himself a little bit. But the movie, as it goes on, it goes the complete opposite direction. So I found that to be really interesting. Like he ended up kind of being the one who was like crazy and had to absolutely be with her as a result of drinking the water from that cave that they were stuck in. Um, and I'm sure that that's what happens in a lot of codependent relationships like that. Um, two people depend on each other, and one person might be more distant, and then that's where it gets unhealthy, and somehow this other person draws them in so heavily that it just becomes ridiculously codependent, and then they become one, I guess.
Yeah, and so something you had brought up that I kind of want to discuss again is because this story, in my opinion, is the most interesting part because it's got kind of like these analogies all across the place, right? And one thing you had brought up about the marriage proposal was the fact that Millie was the one who had proposed to Tim.
Hmm.
And do you remember any of those thoughts you had, and can you like bring up any of it?
Well, that was actually one of my favorite scenes, which I can talk a little bit more about later as we're talking about our favorite scenes from the movie. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, like I said, it's clear that Tim is contemplating his life and purpose with Millie. He has other hopes for his own future. Perhaps he knows that Millie is not the right person for him, or that he knows the relationship is bad for him. You can tell he doesn't want to leave, go to this secluded wilderness town. And then, as he's giving a speech at the going away party, Millie surprises him by proposing. So it felt, that scene felt, I'm not a man, but it felt emasculating and suffocating, given that he's clearly not wanting to move. I felt smothered watching this scene, and I think that they did a good job at conveying how Tim felt before he was brainwashed by the cave water, uh, which, like I said before, is what made him more codependent. So that was a really interesting scene because she's just like proposing to him, and you can just tell he's like, oh, okay. And then he just says yes to be nice because they're in front of all of these people. And that's where it kind of all goes downhill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, the thing is he keeps saying things because he's trying to be nice instead of trying to be real, right?
Yeah. And then, yeah, that's kind of
Um.
how it ends up. And then they end up going there together, right? They're the only person each other knows. And that's what happens. They become so dependent on each other that they end up becoming one. So I'm sure that's how it is in real life
Mm-hmm.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. I One of the other things I had seen, and it happened around that same time in this film that I thought was interesting, is that like, so Tim had this nightmare where it was his mom in bed with his dead dad, which is a plot point they talk about how he could take, he walked in and his mom was still lying in bed with his dead dad, even though he'd been dead for weeks because she just couldn't leave him or couldn't bear the idea of not being with him or something of that sort. And it was at this time where this relationship where she was proposing, and it was right after that, and it was like he was in the room with a dead relationship essentially. So like this rotting couple where one person was alive and the other one was dead seemed to, in my mind, represent their relationship.
Yeah,
Like Millie was alive in that moment, whereas Tim had just killed himself essentially, and he still couldn't say anything about it.
totally.
And it was a really strong scene and like a really good analogy. It's just it was funny because it's like these things they go by and yet you still see this message at the end where they just given in, and I guess that made him a little bit happier in some ways.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And I was kind of thinking back on the cave scene and how that scene, I don't know, I feel like it gave a lot of different messaging for the film because, so basically, the couple is going on a hike and then, because they're going to this cool place they found on the internet. And then they get lost. And then they end up falling into this giant hole, which ends up being the reason that they are possessed and drink the water and all that crap. But after they fall into the cave hole, they're like stuck in there, right? They're like, oh my God, how am I going to get out? Like, I can't figure this out. Like, freaking out as you should. They try climbing out, they can't get out. Um, and I just thought that whole scene was super weird because after they stopped freaking out, they were actually kind of joyful and blissful in this, like, for other people, clearly stressful situation. And it's like you're stuck in this cave. You have to sleep overnight in this cave. You know, you only have a tiny bit of water, and you have all this wine, which they ended up drinking, but they ended up having like fun in this cave where they're completely isolated and lost, and nobody can find them. And then they wake up in the morning and they're all like bright eyed and bushy tailed. And I remember Millie, Alison Brie, that's her name, right? Yeah. This character just saying, "Oh, I didn't know you could
Mhm.
sleep in a cave." Like they'd slept well. And I'm just like, I just feel like that said so much about the movie that they were just like happy and making jokes in the morning when they were like stuck in this cave. And I feel like that's reflective probably of codependent relationships where you're the happiest when it's like just you two and there's nobody else. You can pretend there's nobody else in the world. And it just, I don't know, it just kind of showed how oblivious they were to just the chaos of their own relationship, and how they were so
It,
distracted with each other that they didn't realize this bigger situation that they were in.
yeah, and that's an interesting thought I hadn't had because maybe the cave was another one of these analogies. Like they stayed in the cave overnight, but because they're how the relationship makes them, they basically are in an isolated cave,
Yeah, and I
anyways.
just figured like there had to be a message behind just this like happy kind of cave scene. It just felt too weird to me.
There had to be more than just drinking out of a butthole filled
Yeah,
with
and that's
water.
where he also drank the water, and he had a weird dream and everything, right? Like you still, like there was some weird creature in that cave, and he was like having visions and stuff like that after Millie had gone to sleep.
The cave and the cave expanding and retracting with his breath was
Hmm.
really cool. I actually thought that was a pretty rad scene.
Yeah, that was cool. They definitely got creative.
Um, yeah, and so like the story with one of the things that I think is I don't know how to bring it up. They after the whole entire physical possession, I suppose is as good a word as any, starts and Tim is needing Millie's body
Hmm.
touching him or around him somehow. When they he swallows her hair was a good way to kick it off. It was pretty wild. Um, and then he's in the shower, he's hitting the walls while she's driving away, and then after that he tries to get away, but then he ends up having sex with her in an elementary school
The
bathroom.
worst.
And I don't have a good answer for this, so don't worry if you don't. But why would the filmmakers choose to make it them have sex in an elementary school bathroom other than to add to the tension? Do you think it's strictly to add to the tension?
Well, I think it's to add to the tension and to again show that they make stupid decisions when they're so focused on each other. Like I feel like that's part of codependency. Again, going back to that cave scene where they have this environment where they should clearly be freaking out, not like enjoying and having a lovely, wonderful time. Like I don't feel like you and I would do that if we fell into a cave and had no idea how we were going to get out. So like I feel like that scene was to build tension, but to also show like how stupid they are. Like they're so like Dave Franco, Tim went into that. He was having these issues. He was supposed to go off and um, do like a show with his band that night, and Millie went to work, but then he ended up like having this weird thing happen to him where he's like, I have to be with Millie, or he's having like weird seizures or whatever. And so he ends up walking to that elementary school, and that's all he can think about is her. That's all he can think about is getting close to her. And he sees her out on the playground during recess, and she sees him and she freaks out. She's like, "Oh my god, let's go into this bathroom." Like, she pushes him in, trying to hide him. And then, he starts making advances towards her, and she's just like, goes in, she goes in with it. She doesn't say, "No, not
Mhm.
here." Like, she's just into it. And I'm like, there's no responsible people in this bathroom right now. Like, they're clearly so obsessed and just distracted with.
They're like
They're
so
so
wrapped up with
wrapped up
this
in themselves, they're
relationship that
not
they can't
considering other people
even
or the
perceive.
consequences of their
Hmm.
actions.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So the so that, it just has like a lot of little bits to me like that are interesting because it's trying to make a grander statement of some sort. And I think that the statement on the top is really simple, that codependency is dangerous and it'll end up with the death of the individuals for the life of the couple, right?
Hmm.
And that makes sense, but there's all these little teeny pieces that are happening throughout. Do you think that, and I don't know that I do, but do you think that his mom having had whatever mental issues she had and him visiting the doctor and them suggesting that had anything to do with the codependency? Like maybe he was so scared of what might happen that he just settled for what he had?
I forget, what were the issues?
Or am I looking too deep? I don't remember the exact issues. The doctor like makes some vague statement towards like, well, your mom had it, so you have a history in your family. And he's like, no, it's nothing like that. I don't have anything like that. And that's when he's seeking medication for the quote unquote
Oh,
panic attacks that he thinks he's having.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean,
Like
yeah, I think it
there's
could be.
and then of course like him getting jealous of the principal as soon as the principal's even nice to Millie. That's a clear like she can't even have a coworker that treats her well, you know?
Right, when he like when he's like peeping outside the principal's house when she's in there visiting him, um, just as a friend
That's
or
funny.
whatever.
He looked like he was like, I
He's
need
like,
something. Come on, get out of here.
"Yeah, well, I have a friend who is very codependent, and she just recently saw this movie, and she says that she relates a lot to it. So we've been texting back and forth. I do not have a codependent mindset just from watching this movie. I've never felt like that before. So I can't relate. But she said there were some things that she said that she related to that I would never in a million years relate to, such as being inside her
Mhm.
partner's skin. So she told me that she kind of craves, like, with her, she's very open about her codependency with her partner, and she knows it's an issue. Um, and she told me that there was a scene where I think they're going inside each other's skin or something when they're morphing together. She said she related to that because she said she has very strong urges to actually like be inside of her partner's skin. And I had never, ever heard that from her before. And I never heard that was like an urge or a want from another human being, is to want to be so close to them that you want to be inside of them in that
Is
way.
is this like a thing, or is this just your friend having an interesting
No, I
urge?
think it's
Do
got to
you
be a
know?
thing because she is a self proclaimed codependent, and she knows that about herself. And if that's depicted in the film about these people morphing together, and like
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
they're I think they're holding hands or something, and then their hands, their skin goes together, and near the end of the movie when they're morphing together and you can see all their bones under their skin and everything. Um, I don't. It's just weird because I thought that was just like a visual idea. Like I never thought that was maybe a way that people could be so codependent that they actually felt that way. But she said she often says that to her current partner. Um, I just want to be in your skin, and so it's gotta be a common feeling among super codependent people, I would imagine.
Well, see, with that knowledge, the scene got so much more powerful immediately. That's
Yeah,
wild.
I would
That's
have never thought that
wild.
either, ever, from watching that. Like that would have so much meaning.
No, and this isn't the first movie that's used that either, so I suppose that makes sense. Like if you watch like I forget what year it's from, but Society back in the past, it had something very similar. Um although with less like
You
codependency
don't want to
underneath.
be in my. You don't want
That's
to be
yeah,
in my
okay.
skin.
It's a trap. I'm not going to answer that question.
I just
I know what's going on.
You don't love me.
I'm messing with you. Um so story. I thought that the story was relatively fresh, even though it was presenting an idea that I think that like most people are familiar with. I don't know that I've seen a movie that presented an idea like this so directly and on the nose, and yet still managed to have a fully encapsulated story that was intriguing, interesting, and made me want to know the end. Now, I did guess the the what do you call them, the M Night Shyamalan, the twist, and that was that the principal, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head,
I don't know.
um
Mm,
Jamie,
good job.
was actually already a merger of him and his old partner, and that he was in charge. Because Jamie seemed way too in on. I mean, like they made a point to show that Jamie had seen Tim's Tim's shoes
Yeah,
underneath the stall, and he never asked another question. Like I know bosses are chill, but that's in elementary school. That's too chill.
yeah. I mean, that was definitely
I
suspicious
don't
for
know.
sure. Like, because as he was walking out of the bathroom, yeah,
Like the kid, yeah, and a kid had seen it and came and told him. You know what I mean? Like the kid knew what was going on. Was like, I gotta go tell the principal. Like he's not gonna be like, oh, don't worry about it. It was nothing, unless he's in on it. There was, of course, other hints like the in the picture the partner's wearing glasses and Jamie's not wearing glasses, but then in real life he's wearing glasses.
yeah.
Um,
That was the part where I kind of
very
started
suspicious.
to distrust Jamie, because I was like, oh, maybe he's a good guy. I don't know. When we first met him, but then yeah, after he walked out of that bathroom, um, and Millie, was acting like she was in there all by herself, but she wasn't. Tim was in there too, hiding, standing on top of the toilet. And then as Jamie was walking out, he like looked from the corner of his eye and saw Tim's foot step down, and then it was never mentioned again. So that, well, we end up finding out. But anyway, that scene, yeah, I could tell. I was like, okay, something's up with Jamie. Either he's going to use this against them, or he's got something else weird going on. So yeah, I didn't really trust him that much. And I also,
One really effective scene.
what?
I was gonna say one really effective scene I really liked with Jamie was just when he was pouring the water for Millie. I had kind of had this idea because he didn't turn the faucet on. He was pouring it out of a pitcher. You know what I mean? And that's when I was like, oh, dude, is that the water from the well? And then the next morning she slams her head into the screen door trying to get to Tim. You know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like when I figured out, I was like, oh, he totally gave her the water.
Yeah,
But sorry for interrupting your last thought.
it's okay. I did not realize that until you mentioned it, actually. I'm really bad at paying attention to those little details, but that was a really important little detail. And yeah, then it goes into all of the cult stuff and everything, which actually was my least favorite part of the movie. I wasn't really into the cult story and the church story and all that stuff. I wish they just didn't have that in there, honestly.
They gave like the one interesting idea from Plato where it was like, okay, so humans
Yeah.
were first off had four hands, four arms, or four legs, four arms, two heads, and then they got split in two, so they weren't perfect. And that was like the only interesting part. They kind of blew it with the rest of the cult because it just didn't. You're right, it just wasn't that interesting. Like they didn't flesh it out in any particular way, shape, or form. It was just there as an explanation. So that would be something that I think that they could have done
Yeah, I feel
more.
like they could have come up with a different plot or angle to maybe just talk about the, yeah, codependency, water. I don't know how they became that codependent.
Now let's before we move on to the next subjects. I think we should talk a little bit more about the ending real quick. Not necessarily the getting in your skin, but the whole lead up to it when they're in the driveway and they're yelling at each other, and Millie's like about to bleed out, and but Tim was like, "I'll die instead. It's okay." And then he does the proposal back to her at that point, and then they're crying together. I feel like that was a really important scene as far as the idea of codependency goes, but I don't really know how to feel exactly about it. Like, so was Tim just giving into the relationship and that's what was going to make them happy? Is like, sure, they're codependent, but at least at this point they're embracing it instead of fighting against it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I felt like. I think he thought marriage was going to be the solution. And honestly, I was kind of thinking that too at the end. I was like, okay, this is how they say that you solve codependency. You know what I mean? So yeah, I was definitely feeling
Hmm.
like, I don't know, they tricked us a little bit because I was, yeah, just by his proposal, I was shocked and surprised and was thinking, oh, maybe this is how you cure it, which would be totally weird. Um, but then,
It's like just lean into it. It's fine.
yeah, and then she said yes, but she was like dying, I think, or something like that, because she had been
Hmm.
injured.
I I will say this: it's not often that you see a movie end with happy tones, and it's just like these two trying to live a normal life as one person afterwards. It's not often you see a horror movie end that way.
I have so many questions about that that ending because you know the the last maybe 20 minutes of the movie, Allison, uh, Millie keeps talking about how her parents are coming over Sunday morning for brunch. We know it's going to end with her parents coming over for brunch, and there's a blood mess on the table because they were trying to saw each other apart, and everything's just wrecked. But in the end, they end up morphing together as one into this person who looks like a combination of both of them. I think they had like Millie's eyes and Tim's nose. It just looked weird. I think it might have been CGI. But that last scene is of that random anamorph opening the door to her parents, and then the movie ends. And I'm just like, I have so many questions. Why did they end it that way? I mean, I guess that's a good ending because they leave you with like questions. It's good for me, us, and them.
Hmm.
But I'm like, what would the parents think? That's not their kid. I'm just, it's clearly not their kid.
I yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but like you said, they could maybe say, oh, there's nobody who lives here by that name or whatever.
And then they just go. go missing, or they could make the parents do the same thing. They're like they have the pitcher of water now and they feed it to the parents. Um, what do you think that one at the end? What do you think their name was? Do you think it was Mim or Tilly?
I like Tilly,
Or Millet?
but I have no idea.
Tilly sounds like a real name.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't. I'm looking through IMDb just to see if there's any credits for that person, and I don't see
it
it.
looked like CGI to me.
Unless I'm crazy.
Or-
Yeah, it's probably like the one of those like filters where they do the face swap or whatever, and they just they have a combo filter now. Okay, so let's move off story. Let's talk about acting real quick. And just the characters in general. So Dave, Franco, and Alison Brie, they do the heavy lifting in this film. There are other characters. You can see some of Millie's friends, some of Tim's friends. Jamie, the principal. I think that's pretty much it. There's a doctor. Um, I don't have a lot of edits on the acting. The acting seemed pretty solid. I don't know that they asked them to do a whole lot of like emotional acting in this film. It seemed like either they were scared or or being like kind of passive aggressive or just giving in to each other.
yeah,
And we're moving between these like levels of like I'm mad at this relationship, but I will never do anything to end it. And that's like the whole entire gamut of emotions. So I think they did a good job with what they're giving, and it's not even bad because for the movie you didn't need more. But I don't think that I was like overly wowed by any of the acting.
yeah. I mean, I think James Franco did a good job at being distressed. Like he was pretty believable. Um, I always like him in the movies that I've seen him in. And he did, I think he did a good job at playing like a kind of paranoid, freaked out dude who was a little bit uh, unsure about himself and his future. Um, yeah, but other than that, I wouldn't say anything was like super phenomenal.
Yeah, and it wasn't a bad thing either. Like I don't mean this in some sort of negative way. It's more so just that like I think they crushed what they had, even if it wasn't like asking for some sort of masterclass.
Yeah, it wasn't like an Oscar winning film.
No. Yeah, because Allison Brie and Dave Franco, they had chemistry of a couple that's been together for a long time. Which makes all the sense in the world. So they did have good chemistry on screen. I can't remember a single actor in the film where I was like, wow, that was a bad scene. Even the doctor, when it seems like they were trying to make some attempts at comedy when it could have gone wrong, the doctor stayed pretty on point. Um, and some of my chief complaints aren't necessarily about the acting itself, but maybe some of the writing. Like when it got a little bit funnier at times, I think the tone shift was a little harsh and didn't necessarily fully work for me. Uh, I think there's a moment after they were snorting all the pain, not the painkillers, the muscle relaxers off the floor, where the music completely
Oh,
changed,
yeah.
and then it got a little funnier for a second.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah. And I think the codependence was so extreme that it was comedic. Um, and even my friend who is codependent said that she laughed quite a bit because she was like, yeah, that's actually how it is.
Um, yeah. So I don't know. Like I feel like we already covered enough of that. I'm ready to move on from the acting and characters already. How about
Yeah,
you?
sure.
Okay. 5 things you likely did not know. I'll start us off. Number one, Dave Franco and Alison Brie had to wear the merged arm prosthetic for multiple hours. When they had to use the restroom, they had to go together. And I don't mean like in the same way they did in the movie. I mean like they were actually going to the bathroom.
Like they went in this, yeah, yeah. I get it. I get what you're saying.
May- Maybe maybe at the same time. I don't know. I don't
They,
have any proof of that. Okay.
they need two toilets.
We don't need to postulate on
Okay.
it. I mean, if you did have two toilets, their arms are at least long enough to. Anyway, hit us with number two.
Um, Dave Franco said the most physically demanding scene was the shower scene, where he had to physically throw himself around the ceramic shower while naked, which did look painful. It was kind of funny because he was
Yeah.
like, when Millie had left to go somewhere, she was driving her car, and as she was like leaving, making turns on the road, and uh, Tim was back at home, his body was getting thrown away around as her car was making turns. It was kind of funny, just to kind of show how closely connected they were. But yeah, apparently that was the one of the worst scenes for him to film because he was like actually slamming his body around. You got the next
Well, as you
one?
can imagine, the shower was actually on. It's probably hard not to trip. Yep. Um, Michael Shanks, the director, his partner worked for a sex toy company. During the bathroom sex scene, the prosthetic penis was procured from that company free of cost. That's called using your partner's employment effectively. We didn't talk about that scene. But that scene was gnarly.
Yeah, that was pretty gnarly. Very, very visual. Um, and I could feel
I was gonna,
everything she was
yeah.
going
Okay.
through. You just have to see it to know what we're talking about.
Gotcha.
Alison Brie and Dave Franco are married in real life, and which I think we mentioned earlier. And Franco also directed her in his 2020 thriller called The Rental. So he's been helping her out a little bit. And I think that chemistry made their on screen tension feel a lot more authentic because it did, you believed it.
hmm
You're like, oh, yeah, these
Well,
people
and they
are
definitely have that
definitely in a
like
relationship.
chemistry. If people have been together a long time.
And from what I read, they also there were
Um.
scenes where they had to improvise because the director wanted it to feel more real. So they didn't have lines, and so he just basically said, "This is the situation. Just go at it." And I think that helped too. So they were bringing out some like real maybe tension, and yeah, they didn't. They were just going off improvisation, probably based on real life experiences.
hmm Helps that they both
Got
acted a
another.
lot. Um. And number five, both Dave Franco and Alison Brie love horror. Unsurprisingly, their inspirations for Together were The Substance and The Thing. Great taste. Okay, that
Yeah.
was five things that you didn't maybe not know about the people and the movie itself. So let's talk about creativity, cinematography for a minute. So let's include like special effects, just general things they did that you never seen in other movies. The special effects I'll start off with were like pretty darn good the whole way through. I I have questions on if they used the same studio as The Substance because that couple in the cave that wasn't Tim and Millie, but it was the other couple that had gone lost hiking. They definitely looked like they were straight out of The Substance.
Mm, yeah. Maybe.
hmm
I didn't catch that.
So I mean that's something that I could probably yeah, you had to caught that when the two couples are like merged together, but one of them looks like they died instead,
No, caught that.
and
I just,
it's in the
yeah,
cave at the second time.
yeah, I caught that. I just didn't, I guess, realize. I mean, I did think that it looked like the substance. I just didn't, I couldn't recall a prop that looked like that from that movie or a visual.
Okay, okay, that's
If
fair.
you're saying that that actual
Yeah,
creature
there
came
was.
from the substance.
I don't know that it did. I'm just saying it looked like it could have.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, the other things that I really did like the cave breathing scene. And that was the cave itself was expanding and contracting in accordance with Tim's breathing. So when he was breathing really heavy, the cave was moving a lot. When he slowed down, it slowed down, and that led to a little bit of a jump scare. But the actual just idea of it was pretty cool because the cave ended up looking very organic. It looked like it was a rib cage and it was lungs inside. And I don't know that I've seen a scene like that elsewhere.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Um, mhm. the the dick shot, for a lack of a better term, was intense. So you said you felt everything that she was saying. Anyone, any person with a penis also felt everything that they showed in that scene
Just a little stretching.
because it getting yanked around like that was pretty intense. Just a little stretching. It was a lot of stretching. I mean, can you just pull off the skin? I don't even want to know what happened.
Uh,
um, it has to be
can't hurt that bad.
just intense.
I'm
Um,
just kidding.
eh,
Just so y'all know,
yeah.
I am a sarcastic
The
person.
um the there was a shot of a TV when Millie is in Jamie's house the second time. I think she's looking for her car keys and she looks down the hall because Jamie's wedding is showing on the TV. That shot of the TV down the hallway I thought was a really good shot. It just had like really good framing. It picked everything up and it looked eerie.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those shots where like as soon as you look down the hallway you can feel it. Um, did you have any of these special effects that particularly stood out to you?
I'm trying to think. I don't know if I think the scene at the end where they were merging together, like morphing together, that was probably CGI, right? I mean, I really liked that
Mm-hmm.
scene. I thought it was kind of cool looking when they were like hugging and then they're becoming one basically because they're giving in to becoming one and you can kind of see all of their skin going together and then all of their bones like underneath the skin going as one. And I think that was probably more of a CGI scene, but I thought it looked really cool.
Agreed. What about so there was the one spooky bed
Hmm.
scene in the beginning was really effective at shifting the tone towards something with more tension. So when he has that dream and the bed
Hmm.
elongates and then on the other end is we don't know that it's his mom and dad yet. I mean, you might have been able to guess it, but then you have like the two people who look like they're completely dead, even though the mom's up and
Yeah.
she's smiling at him. First off, if you've never heard of the guy on social media named Spanger Lookray, you should check him out if you like horror things. He does all these jump scare scenes and features and stuff, and they're pretty entertaining. And that scene reminded me so directly of Spanger Lookray, and it looked really cool. I really like the idea of the bed expanding and just the other couple on the opposite side, and they just look so terrifying. And of course, he puts his head on the
Yeah.
sheets, and she's under there.
Ugh. I mean, those types of scenes always creep me out. Just like the rando, creepy old lady or distressed lady in the darkness. Um, but it always works. Like it's so creepy. So I really liked that scene too. But I wanted more of the story behind that. I mean, they gave us, you know, more a little bit around the codependent mom, but I think I would have liked to see a little bit more of like her story and maybe go into a few scenes with like her life or whatever as this like creepy figure.
Yeah, really though, because they had good scenes based around her for sure, but they just never really explained. It's similar to the cult, right? It's just something an avenue that they didn't go
Yeah.
down, which it's a little iffy. Um, I mean, speaking of which, we could go into editing pacing right now if you wanted to.
Yeah,
If you're
we
prepared.
could do that. Let me see. Let's see if I have anything else. Yeah, I mean, I liked a lot
Yeah.
of the realistic effects. Looks like they used a lot of real props and like fake blood and actual art and design, physical art and design for the creativity and cinematography, and a lot of interesting camera angles because they were kind of isolated, and the most of the movie did take place at this house or in this like surrounding area of the house. So I know it can get kind of difficult for directors and filmmakers when they only have one place to shoot, but I'd say they got pretty creative with it, and there were so many other gory visuals and focuses that I think they did a good job. So yeah, we can move on to editing and pacing now.
Mhm. So let's talk about the editing pacing because this is where I think both of us have already stated some issues. Now we did talk about the stuff in the story that was missing, but I would consider that as much as an editing issue in general because they had a lot of these moments that were dedicated to both the cult and to the parents, and they just kind of never went anywhere. So I'm kind of wondering if this is one of those films where it could have added like an extra 10 minutes for both of those, like 5 minutes of scenes total for the parents, 5 minutes of scenes for the Colts, and we could have got a much more
Hmm.
fleshed out movie.
Yeah,
That's my immediate thought.
yeah, I would think so too. It did feel like some areas were spread thin, and maybe they were trying to do a little bit too much. I mean, the base of the story with the codependency, I feel like in itself was just such a strong viewpoint and perspective. And I don't think they needed a whole lot more than that, but I understand why they added that, because they wanted it to seem more of like he drank this stuff and became more codependent. But I mean, before he drank it, we were already figuring what direction this was going. So.
Hmm. I 100% right. It's like you already knew. So what's the rub? The one scene that I think it kind of didn't work for me that it was a pivotal scene and it was a pretty big scene and I might have a lot of people disagree with this particular take, but when they wake up and their arms are still fused together and it's kind of a comedic scene a little bit, but it's also an intense scene where she has to figure out how to use the saw with one
Yeah.
hand while they're drunk and she has to unsaw it. Now, my issue with that scene is that we're watching all of this very gratuitous graphic stuff and they don't even like take the moment to show anything actually happening other than James Franco screaming. It's just a weird choice in the middle of the movie that made that part seem less effective than the rest of the
Yeah, like
scenes.
James Franco screaming and them getting drunk at what, 7 a.m. or something like that. Yeah, that was
Hmm.
really interesting. And I would be curious to know what my friend thinks about that because I feel like maybe that was trying to do a little bit more storytelling about what codependency is like. Like, because in that scene, they seemed pretty manic also. And I know that in my friend's
Hmm.
situation, her and her partner get manic together all the time. Um, but that was like manic, not in a good way. It was like in a bad way. And they were like drinking and using a saw to cut off body parts or cut them. Yeah. I don't know. It was a weird scene, but I feel like it was trying to tell us something, um, us just about the dynamic of codependency and how crazy it can make people feel.
Yeah, maybe I'm missing some of the like undertones there too to make the statement because that was the one scene where I'm like, it should be more effective than it
But for
was for
me, as
me.
like a non-codependent person, I think that it, yeah, I didn't relate. I was like, I felt the same way. I was like, why is this in this movie? Like, I don't understand. So random. It just,
It's
it
you've already
felt
shown
forced.
worse things. Like, yeah, um, yeah. So for me, it's the movie. The movie felt like it ran fine. It didn't feel like it was extra long or extra short. It just felt like it was missing something a little bit underneath. So they could have added more to it, in my opinion, and that's a more positive feeling than wanting
Mhm.
less, right?
I would
Um,
be curious to know
it's not
about
perfect.
the director's background with codependency because maybe it's just all from personal experience.
Yeah, because the director Michael Shanks, he also wrote the film.
Hmm.
Um, he doesn't have a lot of he doesn't have a lot of other uh material to go look at. So he's got one short film called Reboot It, a music video for called Parked or video. I don't really know what that means. A few episodes of different TV
Hmm.
shows, and that's it.
Wow. Okay. So if he wrote it, he probably
So
has personal
this is
experience.
hmm hmm um he also was a visual effects artist, so that might have been another good reason why they would choose him because he could help make some of these special effects come to life. Yeah, I don't. The editing, otherwise, I didn't feel any particular way. I it wasn't my favorite because I think that it cut things for time, and I don't love that. But other than that, the movie seemed to flow pretty fine. So I don't have a lot of other notes on editing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we pretty much agree on all the same things. Like, yeah, I was bored by the culty stuff. That's for sure.
Sound. So they use the music and the sound a lot to shift tones. One particular time that I noticed it was the tone shift right after the muscle relaxer scene where they're on the ground and snorting all of the muscle relaxers and eating all of them. I can't tell you what the music piece was, but the music completely changed the tone directly after that, and it
It
went
was
pretty
like an
wild.
advertisement for Valium.
Yeah, right. Like you can take as much as you want, you won't die. Trust me.
Is that true? I
Um,
didn't even know that about.
but no, and I want to stress to the listeners at this point: don't take as much Valium
I
as you
thought it
want.
was
You
like
may
a
die. I
painkiller.
don't know that.
But yes, do not take that. But
Y-
yeah, that was a weird scene.
Yeah, and the music was used pretty effectively to shift tone, but like the music was effective. The one thing I would say about it is for a movie that features their main actor as an indie rock guitarist, I think the music was a little
He
underutilized.
was an indie rock guitarist.
That's my understanding. He looked like he was like a New York
Oh,
indie rock guitarist, and like the song he was playing in the whatever room you'd call that
oh, because he played acoustic, right?
seemed to do that. No, he was playing an
I don't know
electric.
why I did not think he was indie rock. I was thinking it was more like something harder than that. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't think so. That guy is too passive aggressive for that.
Really? I didn't get that
Really
vibe
aggressive
from
aggressive.
him. I got the vibe of like him maybe being a cooler guy like beforehand because his friends looked super cool and then maybe hit, getting into this relationship is what changed him because I think there were some um, Yeah, I feel like his friends were telling him at the beginning how much he changed and stuff like that. So yeah, that's interesting. I didn't get the indie type chill music guy. I got like more hard rocker type of guy.
Yeah, well, I think if you like look up like a band like the Strokes in the early 2000s, they were like party animals and they're
Yeah.
still indie rock, right? So that's kind of like the vibe
Okay.
I was getting from it. They seem to give me that sort of feeling. I can't say for sure. They never specified. I just heard him playing that one guitar
I
part, and
was
that was
hoping
pretty
we
indie
would
rock
go to
sounding.
the show he was performing. Like I kind of, I mean, I
Yeah,
isolated
it's
and
just
stuck because I was like, oh yay, we get to go somewhere else other than this like weird town. Like he's gonna take a train and go perform somewhere, but then of course he doesn't because all he's thinking about is his girlfriend.
has a panic attack. Yeah. So the music for me was a little underutilized. It wasn't bad, but they just I feel like they could have did more with it. They could have done more. Um, do you have anything else to say about
Not
music?
really. Some of the sounds were
Nice.
striking, not the
So let's move on.
music. I didn't. I guess I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the music, but um, the sounds of like blood splattering and things like that was interesting to me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, you can tell when there's an ineffective soundscape. You know, like you watched Escape from New York for me. Did you notice how many times they were running and the footsteps weren't making noises, but then sometimes the footsteps were making
You know,
noises?
I did not notice that.
Yeah, I did. It bugged the hell out of me, and I love that movie, so it's rough, you know.
That's funny because you didn't even realize the different sounds that the feet make in uh not animal is it Animal Crossing? Stardew Valley. Because
It is
remember when we
Stardew
were
Valley.
playing and I pointed out, I was like, oh, if you go on different like types of ground, like rocks or gravel or grass, your feet make different sounds. And you're like, I didn't notice that.
You know, I had never made a pathway. I always just laid out all my stuff willy nilly. So, um, okay, so This is the Stardew hour. Okay,
Yeah.
uh, we'll move on to the next part. Your three favorite scenes of the film. Now, of course, co-hosts can repeat these because it's just three scenes and they're your favorites. You know, there's no rules that your favorite can't also be someone else's favorite. Um, I'm gonna just go ahead and start first because that's the way we have it listed in our show doc here. One, the bathroom scene with the disturbing prosthetic. The act itself is in such a wrong, disturbing place in elementary school. But then the body horror really hits home. I mean, I we talked a little bit about this. The dick shot with the extended dick because the this I'm gonna say dick three times in a row. The dick, just
Can make a
they were
song.
stuck together after. Yes, exactly. After having sex, they were stuck together, and they showed enough. They didn't show everything, but they showed enough, and what they showed hurt. And then they pulled each other apart, and you heard it, and it hurt too. And it was already in this tense place because they were definitely being sexual perverts, having sex in an elementary school bathroom with a
Not
kid present.
okay.
As a father of two children, let me tell you. Um, Number two,
Don't.
any of the scenes where the actors are fighting their body movement
Mhm.
toward each other. So there's a couple of scenes where the actors are attempting to stop their bodies from unwillful propelling towards each other. That's my legal definition. Um, I also it got me wondering. Do you think Alison Brie is actually a
I mean,
contortionist, or do
she
you think
was
they had
in
body doubles?
Glow. And
She was. No, I'm legit. It's a question because I think she
she was
could
doing
be a
problem.
contortionist a
I
little bit
think she was
because some of
doing a
those
lot of
moves
her
she's
own
making were
stunts in
wild.
that show. So I think she probably did do a lot on her own because in an interview I watched, um, they were just asked questions about like what impressed you most about, James Frank or Dave Franco was asked, what impressed you most about like watching your um, wife in this film? And he was like, just the ability to keep moving forward and doing scenes and like taking your body to the limit, basically. So I'm sure she did a lot
Mhm.
of her own stuff.
Yeah, like I remember near the end, she attempted to brace herself on a park bench, not a park bench, it's a bench in her front yard, but on a bench, and then instead her body like twists the opposite way and goes over the bench. And it didn't look like CGI, it looked like someone's actual body, like a contortionist doing it. It was really cool. And all of the scenes in the hallway where she was walking backwards or her body was like bending itself to almost flip over towards him. Just if that was actually her, serious kudos because it looked like it would hurt. I would be dead.
Yeah,
I have to assume.
that looks like it hurt.
Um, uh, Number three, Alison Brie's first time losing control while she was sleeping. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is the scene where Tim is
Oh,
just
yeah.
sitting in the I'm gonna call it an office. I don't know what else to call it, but sitting in the office, he had just missed his buddy's shows. They were pissed at him, but he didn't respond to the text. He's sitting there looking at the laptop, following the images of the couple that had gone missing in essentially his backyard. And then out of nowhere, you see just like this body floating towards the door in the background. And of course, it is Millie's body, and she smacks into the door. And he moves her around, and he finally gets her to like lift off her feet. She's levitating, her body's so drawn to him, and using the door between them was a really good tactic to make it look spooky because it's like they had like a frosted glass effect on the door, so you couldn't really fully see the body. So, anyways, just a really cool scene. I thought it was one of the more effective horror moments in the movie because it didn't rely just strictly on a quick jump scare. It kind of sat with it for a second and it still let you look at like, wow, so this is really messed up. What's going on with them? And now they're both gonna know for sure. And the only way he was able to get at her out of it was he like I think he smacked her or he punched her or something,
Oh,
and of course she was pissed at that. Fair, but also like bad situation. So those are my three favorite scenes of the film. Janice, what are your
yeah.
favorite
So,
scenes of the
like I
film?
said, I really liked the proposal scene at the beginning. I feel like it just sent a strong message for the tone for the rest of the film. And it just made me feel awkward. And I feel like there's a lot, like, it's not easy to make me feel awkward when I'm watching movies. So I feel like they did a good job of making me feel awkward in that scene when uh, Millie was emasculating her partner. Sorry about that. So yeah, I'd say it was probably more my favorite scene just because of the way that it made me feel. It wasn't so much the visuals, but um, it just made me feel awkward and sad for these people. And then the next scene,
Mhm.
kind of similar, which I mentioned before, as the cave scene. So it wasn't so much about the visuals for the cave scene for me. It was just like the what it maybe was trying to convey about these two people who are codependent being stuck in this cave, who should be freaking out, but who are actually having a quite good time being lost together and are a little bit delulu. So I think that just said a lot about their relationship and their priorities and how much they only care about each other and nothing else happening to them. As long as they have each other, that's all that matters. And the
Mhm.
last scene is. Oh, I said all of these already. When they're becoming one, they're morphing
Yeah.
together uh, at the end. And I think that became one of my favorite scenes after I was talking to my friend who said that she literally told her partner, I want to be inside your skin. And something I found out about that scene is Michael Shanks said he wanted the horror to feel like codependency made flesh. that morphing scene is the horror metaphor in its rawest form. So, yeah, it's just about two people so bound up in each other's dysfunction that they literally lose their individual identities and become one. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's give our reviews. Do you want to go first or want me to go first? I'll let you
I'll
choose.
go ahead and go first.
Please.
Let's see. I really like the movie because I feel like I am understanding it a lot more with, my good friend's situation that she's going through. I liked the story a lot because, um, as her good friend, I am hearing all of her stories around codependency and all the different things that she's experiencing. So I kind of felt like I was watching her life as I was watching the movie, which I guess makes me a little biased, um, and made me enjoy the movie more and try to understand the characters' perspectives more. Um, so I think I would give the movie a 7 because of that, because I felt a little bit biased. But if I didn't have maybe more of an emotional connection to the movie, I'd probably give it a 6. I mean, I really liked the story. It was super unique. I've never seen a horror movie around codependency before. I mean, I guess, after reading into this one, there are some that exist. Um, but I had never seen it, and I think it is probably a pretty rare type of story. And I think they did a really good job with the body horror aspects, um, and the characters' chemistry together. And yeah, overall, I think it was a good film. So, and it was fun to watch and a little bit uncomfortable. So, yeah, 7 out of 10.
Mhm. Mhm. Sick. That's a wonderful score. My review story, I'm giving it a 4 straight up. We talked a lot about it. I thought that the story not only was pretty effective, but it was interesting in the analogies that it made and maybe some of the allegories even maybe. Um the only thing I wish from the story is that it had gone more into the cult or more into the family if they were going to include it that much. Like, show me more. But as it stands, it didn't detract enough from it for me to feel really lost. Um, the acting is a 4. It was all perfect at what they asked for. It didn't elevate the movie necessarily to the next level. Like, I didn't feel like, wow, this was so good because I felt like they were really living it. But they did great. I don't want to pit. Like, there's no reason to nitpick this performances because these performances were good, as particularly for a horror movie. Horror movies can have some really bad performances. This is not one of those films. The performances were spot on. They were fine the whole way through. Cinematography, creativity. We talked a lot about a lot of these scenes. I'm giving this a 4 as well because I thought the creativity in this film was pretty good. I mean, it's not necessarily unique. Body horror has been doing things with people's bodies for a long time. A long time. Like, you can liken this film, some parts that look like The Substance, other parts look like Society, but those movies aren't that common, and mixed with the way they presented them, it all felt pretty
Mm-hmm.
darn fresh. Um and the movie starts off with two dogs' faces merging in dark light, and it kind of just keeps up this feeling the whole way through that something's wrong. And it looks that way too. So the transformations weren't the only part of it. The tone through the visual setting was good. The just I mean, I'm gonna give it a 4. It was a nice looking movie. It had some shots that I really enjoyed. Yeah, I don't have a lot of
Okay,
complaints.
yeah, I just was thinking about the dog scene, and that was very much the thing inspired too.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. You could feel the thing in that first scene, so it wasn't shocking when I found out that was one of their main
Yeah,
inspirations.
for
That
sure.
makes sense. Um, the editing of the film, I talked again about this. There was one scene in particular that I One, it changed a little bit. The hand sawing scene, the other parts that I wish could have been included. I think they could have added more to this movie. I think they had some space and they should have used that space. The editing is a 3. The music and sound 3, not because it's bad, but because I don't think they utilized it enough either. These are the things that I think could have taken this movie to a whole nother next level. Like this movie's advertised as the next Substance, but I don't think it quite reaches those highs. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 also.
So, with the hand sawing scene, are you saying you wish that they showed us a little bit more graphic, um, blood, gore?
More graphic or made it feel more intense in some way. You know what I mean? Like the muscle relaxers were used too much as a scapegoat instead in the place of tension. So like the tension dropped off on something that should have been incredibly awful, but they were like muscle relaxers. It's all cool, baby.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, so it's like it was like immediately after that, I'm like the tone is shifted because they're on drugs, but not necessarily in a good way. It just kind of removes the tension. It almost makes them feel like they're vaguely invincible or
Oh,
something.
yeah. Okay.
Which maybe that's how it actually feels, but it didn't necessarily work as far as actually viewing the movie, in my opinion. And this is nitpicking because I'm not. This isn't bad. It's just I think it could have been better.
And just to clarify, you are giving
Oh
it a 4 out of 5.
yeah, everything's out of 5. So altogether, the scores came up to an 18 out of 25, which roughly translates to
Oh, I
7.2
see.
out of
Okay.
10. I rounded down in this case, 7 out of 10. Which is a strong film. We've been on a good tear of pretty good movies lately, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, and I
But
definitely
let's tell the story.
recommend people go and see it. Got a little bit of gore,
If you listen to this podcast and you didn't see it yet, you're
a little
crazy.
bit of romance, a little bit of codependency.
Yeah, a lot
I
of
want
it
to be,
goes. Just drink the red wine when they come over. It's
yes,
fine.
and crawl inside of their skin.
Yeah. Okay. So I will announce our next movie. So the next movie I'm doing, we have a brand new guest host. His name is Adam. You can check out at VHS Goblin on Instagram if you want to see his account. Him, and I, if I'm going to speak the quote unquote correct English, are going to be watching the stuff from 1985. Now, the stuff from 1985, that is a classic horror film. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out so you can listen to our next podcast. That is, of course, directed and written by Larry Cohen, starring Michael Moriarty. It's a great time. Trust me on that, and I'm going to enjoy talking about it with Adam. Yeah. So, thank you, Janice. We appreciate the 2 episodes you've done this round.
Anytime, I'm here because we live together.
Anytime.
But next movie I
Well,
do will be Freaky Friday 2. Just so
so
everyone
get prepared for
knows.
that, listeners. Um, until then, BRB, dying.
I want to be in your skin.